And let's do it. Welcome back, Claire. It's good to have you back and be able to chat again. Always insightful chats that we have. For those of you who've just joined, today we're going to chat about the role of community in solving problems and innovating. So, why is it better to work in a community? And Claire has got tons of experience working with communities, both in terms of building the science body of knowledge and the verism body of knowledge. Um, so episode 1 for 2023. Apologies for the delay, but we rethought the format slightly. So there is a theme that will run through all of the chats this year, and that theme is innovation and problem solving. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. So, tell me, why is community so important when you want to come up with innovative ideas, or when you've got pressing problems that needs to be solved?
The reason I said community is based on my experience of working with communities and kind of building communities, and I've been chatting a lot to David Barrow about this as well, who I know is a regular on here too, and really it's about the fact that as an individual you can recognize a problem and you can think about how maybe to address that problem, but your worldview is limited by your experience, by your location, by the organization that you work within. So if you open that up a little bit, say you open it up to your team, immediately you get some more diverse perspectives. You maybe get some ideas that you wouldn't have thought of as an individual. If you open that up even more broadly, so in a lot of organizations, what I see them try and do is have IT and business people interact, because sometimes IT people struggle to understand the business perspective. And again, you get this additional perspective. And then what I've been very lucky to experience is much broader communities that span multiple countries, multiple organizations, multiple age ranges, multiple genders, everything. And genuinely what I found is that the more diversity you have, the more innovative the solutions you can potentially come up with. The more challenging it is to manage a community as well. There's a big piece of work that goes into managing this, but having that diversity. And I think there's been some, they're not funny really, they're horrific, but examples online of sort of tech ideas that have clearly been thought of by 3 people in a room. So there's things that allow you to track people that maybe some men have invented, and then women came and went, that seems quite frightening to me to have to put my address in there. Or the automatic soap dispenser that only works for white skin. And you can almost envisage the small teams that develop these, and how if it had been much broader, they would have had more opportunity to innovate. So that's why I sort of picked this as a topic, because it's something that delivers massive benefits. It's something that has to be managed. But I think for your viewers, it's something that they can potentially think about, whether that's building a community in their own organization, whether it's joining existing communities, and starting to try and think about how that can help with the day-to-day problems that they're experiencing.
Yeah. There's a nice little caricature that was doing the rounds a few months ago. It talked about the dangerous animals of project management, but I think it's appropriate within any context. And the thing with community is community only adds value if you allow the community to have a voice.
Yes.
Um, so if you've, I think Netflix calls it, they say they don't employ brilliant jerks. So for them, the fact that you are able to work in a diverse community is actually more important than your technical competency. And I agree with that. I think that's really important to do that. So here's the thing. You talked a little bit about the fact that it's challenging to manage communities. Let's chat a little bit about some of those challenges, maybe,
Mm,
because if we don't, deal with those challenges, we're not going to get the benefit.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that was kind of challenge number one, that you've just mentioned there, is the fact that you you have to have a genuine community, and there's a lot of organizations that will request feedback and then do nothing with it, and it's the same with a community. You know, if you invite people to give you an opinion and then think, oh well, doesn't really agree with what we were thinking, your community will be disengaged very, very quickly. So
Yeah.
that's something that I think it's almost the first hurdle is to decide how genuine you are in your desire to build a community. Because if you're just looking for that echo chamber that reinforces what you think, you know, if those new features are going to ship, no matter what the input from the community is, then save your energy. One of the things that I've been very deliberate about with the communities that I've built is being conscious and respectful of people's time. You know, most communities, we are not paying people financially for their involvement. So
Mm.
it's a real core principle for me that if you're not going to pay people with money, you have to be paying them in some other way. And by paying them, I mean building a space for them to interact in something that they feel excited about, or, you know, giving them an opportunity to share their expertise, letting them feel listened to. With the Cyan body of knowledge, you know, everybody who contributed had their name published in a book. So I know some of the consultants who were involved, that helped them win work. We won an award, you know, so everybody who was in that community could list that award on their profile as well. So you have to kind of nurture the community, and there has to be a reward. You know, people in
Mm.
the service management space, which is really my experience, people are very keen to be involved. You know, they want to do things, they want to share, they're excited to talk about new ideas, but at the same time, it has to be sort of something that's rewarding for them. It shouldn't just feel like I'm taking everything from you and then I'm going to put it in a book and I'm going to sell the book and laugh all the way to the bank kind of thing. There has to be a
Mm.
reward. So I think be
Yeah.
genuine about the community, and think about how you reward people. Um, Inclusivity is another big one as well. With the communities that I've worked with, it's global, and um, you know, sometimes the people from Australia and New Zealand, they always get the crappy call times. You know, everybody else, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They're dialing in,
Mm.
it's 2 o'clock in the morning, or it's 7 o'clock at night, or whatever it might be. So one of the things that we did with Verizon was we had the regular calls so that everybody could contribute, but we had the early time slot and we had the later time slot. So hopefully nobody was disadvantaged and everybody had an opportunity to contribute. So that'd be another one as well, is, you know, find people where they are and find how they want to talk. I used to love the sort of the regular calls we did for Verizon, because we would chat about all sorts of things, but sometimes some people want to talk in a Slack channel, or, you know, they just want to add notes to a document, whatever it might be. So there'd be a few sort of initial thoughts that I would give to people.
Mm. Again, one of the things you also mentioned is the fact that everybody must have a voice.
Mm,
Now, how How do you deal with the issue if somebody's voice is always the minority? Because that can be quite challenging.
Yeah, it can. And we, when we were in the Verism group, we had some fairly healthy debates. And same with the Siam group, when it comes to sort of nailing down terminology, there will be some people who are just more naturally used to being heard. There will be some people who will be more introverted, maybe contribute in different ways. They're not active as much in the calls. And again, it's as a community manager, it's being conscious of that and understanding, how to get around it. One of the really silly things we did with the Siam group, but worked really well, was we did have one face-to-face meeting, and I gave everybody red and green bits of card. So all of the sort of terminology issues we've been debating and all the little things that needed signing off, we just voted with cards in the room, and then it was quick and everybody got heard. And in the end, we had to say, so look, that's the majority opinion. You may not agree with it, but part of the principle is the community is to accept the spirit of the community as a whole. So you can still personally disagree with something, but accept that as a community we have made that decision. So I think part of it is that kind of active community management, but we are also helped now by technology. Technology can really help us build a community because it does give people different opportunities to have a voice. We can have discussion forums, we can have like buttons, as well as the conversations. I did read something was quite interesting about Zoom calls as opposed to face-to-face meetings remove all the disparities. So if you're somebody who's 5 foot tall and you're normally in a meeting full of people who are 6 foot tall, doesn't matter anymore on Zoom. So technology, I think, has been a bit of a leveler there as well.
Okay, let me move back a little bit so that my face is smaller.
He's a giant.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of problem solving and innovation workshops also, and that's one of the things that I use over and over again is this we vote with little stickers, yeah, the dot, yeah, so the dot voting thing, and it stops quite a lot of the nasty debate, yeah, because you don't explain why you vote that way, you just vote, yeah,
Yeah.
um, and by the way, it goes much quicker because
Yes.
people don't talk nonsense. Yeah. The other
Yeah.
thing about the dot voting thing is we always stand while we're doing it, so nobody wants to stand for too long.
I understand that.
Yeah, well, okay. So giving them a voice, having diversity within your team, um, and that's the broadest possible diversity that we're talking about. We're talking about cultural, we're talking about age, we talk about experience, and experience and age is not the same thing. Um, we talk about maybe different roles, yeah, because that brings different perspectives, yeah. Um, what is else is important in terms of creating that diversity within a group?
I think
What do you think of?
roles is an important one that you've just mentioned, because not everybody wants to contribute in the same way. So there might be, when we're working on the body of knowledge, there might be some people who, they love to author and that's what they want to do. They're quite happy writing. There might be some people who love to review. There might be some people who just want to turn up on the calls and chat about the ideas and have somebody writing everything else down. And that's okay too, as long as it's really clear what everybody is signed up to do, and also then what everybody is accountable for. So if you've put your hand up to say I'm a reviewer, be a reviewer, because if not, you're letting other people in the community down. But by having
mm,
a sort of a diverse range of roles, what that does allow for is people with different levels of time and different levels of commitment to be present and active in the community. And it's kind of it's a strange one for me, because I I exist as a woman in tech, and I spend great swathes of my professional life in meetings that are, all men or all white or whatever it might be. But I never I never tried to think about that. And with the communities that I've built as well, I've not purposefully gone out and said, find me some women, find me some people from these countries. We want more people from India or Japan or Australia or whatever it might be.
mm,
We've just opened the doors and clearly explained what we were doing, and people have joined. And I wonder perhaps if that means there's a group that I'm missing. Maybe there is
mm,
more that I could have done, but it wasn't. We didn't have a specific sort of diversity drive. We just said to people, join, and people did. Which we were limited really to English speaking, which is um, a
well, yeah,
difficult one to resolve. But we did have
mm,
we did work with some local people through Exin, helped us with that, to make sure that we had actually some input from Japanese reviewers. So we did try and overcome that one, but it is a challenge. But I guess it's another part of community management, is to review your community regularly and ask
mm,
yourself, does this actually reflect the entire audience that I want it to reflect? So if we have reached a point, we've done it with Service North actually. So with the SIAM conference that we organise every year, that is one where I have sometimes looked at the agenda and gone, this isn't particularly diverse, and then specifically gone out to look for some people who could bring a different perspective. But in terms of a community, it's ongoing community management. If you have just one perspective, just one viewpoint, it is going to limit the innovation that can happen, because
yeah,
everybody's looking through a similar lens.
yeah. And I think that the appropriate thing that you also said there is, you need to decide who your target audience is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got grand ambitions in terms of scalability and acceptability of your product or your service or whatever, then you purposefully have to do something to make things more diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's not always easy because unfortunately we're limited to our networks,
Mm-hmm.
and organization. You're limited to the people that you work with, um, and yeah, I look at the amount of people that's connected to me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and it is more diverse than what it was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
But there's very little representation for from the Far East, for instance, within my
Mm-hmm.
network, and because of language, most probably the rest of the Americas, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and even, I mean, I live in the African continent, and these far more connections that I have in, for instance, India,
Mm-hmm.
than what I have in. So yeah, it's work. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to build a community, it's work. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have to
Yeah.
purposefully do something.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I mean, what you're saying about LinkedIn. When we went to Japan and we were talking about Siam in Japan, the feedback we got from there was actually, we don't really use LinkedIn. So sometimes you're not even in the spaces where people are, what we take for granted. But I think, if you can look at your network and find somebody who's maybe got a foot in your network and a foot somewhere else, whether that's in another industry, another country. If you can get them engaged, then they can bring somebody from their network who is adjacent, and it can kind of move out from there. So it is being purposeful about it. But again, technology can help us massively because we can have these degrees of connection with people, and that can bring people in.
What I also find is that sometimes we spend too little time with our community about building the community.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you rightfully said, yeah, if you're only going to rely on yourself to build the community, yeah, it's going to be a skewed community.
Yes.
But if you can involve other people to get people within their sphere of influence excited and gung ho about being part of this initiative, then
Mm-hmm.
we've got a slightly better chance. And that's something that I now have to say to myself also, building my community. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're looking at building a SIAM community this year. So having kind of an ongoing community so we can evolve SIAM content, we can have debates and discussions. And one of the roles that we're specifically looking at is to have community champions. So people that we know have been involved with things before, but people that we know will be active to come in and maybe seed a conversation, because the community doesn't just happen overnight. You have to let people maybe just see it initially and then develop trust in how it's going to work for them. So I think having the community equivalent of a super user is hugely beneficial. And whether that's somebody who's got an interest in a particular topic, or somebody who will just come in and ask questions, that will really help. And a community has to live, because if it doesn't live, it dies very, very quickly, and it's hard to get that back again once it's died off.
Yeah. You've basically got one chance. That if you,
Mm.
I nearly used my normal colloquial words with it. If you stuff it up once,
This is it. And if you think, I mean, back in the day, we used to be on, there used to be discussion forums, and we specifically went to discussion forums to talk about things, and then they died, and we kind of moved to more sort of broader social media like LinkedIn, like Facebook. And the LinkedIn groups used to be really good for discussion, but then they sort of degenerated into babble and adverts. And there is that sort of sense of evolution that's going to happen. And if those old discussion forums that we used to hang out in, they're pretty much dead. So it requires a bit more sophistication now to build a community as well, because you have to get people to come. LinkedIn, Facebook are destination applications. People are going there pretty much every day anyway. If you want somebody to join your space, it comes back to that. How are you paying them? What are you giving them in return for them giving you their time and their attention?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I promise that I will not keep you longer than 30 minutes. So any closing remarks, because there are two or three things that I need to do to close off in terms of this thing. If I can say to you, what are the 5 most important things that you think anybody needs to do to build a sustainable community that's got longevity? What would that be?
Gosh, 5 things. Okay, so
5 things, yeah.
have a vision for the community and have that at the heart of everything that you do, which comes back to the first thing we talked about. If you're not going to listen, why bother? So have a vision, have roles in there. So have people with different roles, create roles that allow people to engage in the way that they want to engage, reward people. So pay them for giving you the time, the attention. One
And you're
thing that
not
we've not
meaning money
mentioned,
there. There's lots of payments that you can make. Yeah.
yes, rewards. Part of a club is being, it can be a rewarding experience. One thing that we've not mentioned is cadence. So
Oh,
for
yeah.
community to live, regular content, regular updates. People know, if I come on a Monday, there's going to be a new blog. If I come on a Tuesday, there's going to be a webinar. That's a really important part of it being alive. And curate it, constantly manage it to make it as open and as diverse as possible. And I think that's 5 things. Do not ask me to repeat them because I won't be able to remember them.
Luckily, it's recorded.
Thank God for the internet.
That's been awesome. So you talked about the people down under on a different time scale. So for those of you listening, my next 2 guests are from Australia. So the session will be early morning. So we're going to talk to Paul Collins and Karen Ferris, and then we're back to Europe the session afterwards. So we'll keep on with this every second week cadence, since that's a very important thing for the rest of the year. And if you want to make contact with Claire, Claire's taken the liberty of actually sharing. Why doesn't it want to do it now? Hello. I'm clicking on this stuff. I've taken the liberty of actually sharing the information that is public. So I got it from LinkedIn. So
Yep,
hopefully there's no
absolutely.
GDPR issues around sharing that.
No, very happy with
So
that,
if
and
you want to
happy for
chat to
anyone to
Claire
get in
about
touch.
this, awesome. And also, if you want to be part of that SIAM community, reach out and go and be awesome there. Yeah, we all appreciate the input that you give. We desperately want that input, and we value your contribution. Once again, Claire, thanks a stack for giving so freely of your time to my community. It's much appreciated. And have a wonderful day and hope to see you back soon.
Thank you for having me, Johan.
Always a pleasure. Cheers, everyone.